A very good afternoon from Kampala, Uganda, and welcome to this edition of Ugandans in Diaspora show on Civic Space TV. I am Philip Mulisa. In this episode, I host very many people, so much knowledgeable and both in terms of literature, but also experience of the United States of America. And we're here to talk about the US election that was just concluded a few days ago. We have the results as we speak. We know, even though counting is still going on in particular spaces and confirmations here and there, we know that former President Donald John Trump is president-elect of the United States of America. And we also know that in this series, he's going to have control of the Senate and the House of Representatives, and that is added advantage for him to see that he has a smooth term and be able to implement most of the things he's interested in implementing in that particular part of the world. Now, joining me to make sense of what that means for the United States, for Africa, for immigrants, and for the world is a panel of distinguished citizens of the world, and I will introduce them just briefly, and we get into the conversation quite later. Starting with from Africa, I have Madam Chomgasho Miriam. Miriam, greetings and welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, Phil and the panelists. It's a pleasure to be here once again.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and we have to have you in this conversation. Next is a member of the Alliance for National Transformation, and he's based in the United States of America. He is a member of that chapter out there, Mr. Kamhanda Francis. Francis, greetings and welcome to the show.
Thank you, moderator, all our viewers and those who are listening in, and to my fellow panelists. It is always exciting discussing matters of national importance to our country, and also how we position ourselves in as far as global issues are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. I also have Mr. Kwesiga Brian. He is a former president of the Uganda North American Association, but also a very active member of many associations that are lobbying for, among others, things to do with the involvement of the diaspora community, political activities within the country, Uganda. Brian, we're happy to have you. Greetings.
Greetings, Phil. Thank you for having me. Thank you, fellow panelists, for being here. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Colleagues, join us in the conversation later. We'll be expecting Mr. Bakasara Albert and Reverend Joseph Kamugisha. We're going to start the conversation, and it's good you all are in the United States of America.
Reverend is here already.
Oh, yes. My apologies. Reverend Kamugisha, greetings. You're most welcome to the conversation. Reverend, you can hear me?
Oh, yes, I was muted. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and for hosting us. I look forward to a wonderful deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and indeed, we can't wait to hear what you have to share about this electoral process and indeed what we can learn as people, as Ugandans, as Africans, as citizens of the world. I want us to start here, and I should start with you, Francis. You see, Donald Trump wins an election. His party has the Senate, has the House of Representatives. How did he get to this kind of victory at such a time in the United States of America? Yes, Francis.
Thank you, moderator. The question you have asked me is, number one, you know, America, unlike back home, people will vote number one issues. So each candidate or each party will present what issues they are passionate about. So that is one. But also, secondly, you know what has been going around globally. There are issues where people people are fearing of the future, or they fear the future. So now, first, we could say that Donald Trump had issues that resonated with what the population wanted at this time. For example, although some of his promises are empty promises, he was talking very much about the economy compared to the Democrats. So if he packaged that very well, then people voted it. Migration is a very huge question in as far as US is concerned. You have seen even in Europe and elsewhere. So he was also talking much about that. So having left those points aside, but then I would come and say that it was a fundamental factor that played in this election was race, and then gender, like America not being ready for a woman. Why do I say that? If it was an issue of democracy and who should be in the office, we could have seen it by the demographics. Biden came to power, almost 81 million Americans voted for him. So if that is a vote for the Democrats, we could expect the same vote, nearly the same vote, to come to Biden. But instead, this time, Kamala Harris got 66 million, which is where almost they lost 15 million. While Trump, I would not say that Trump was voted overwhelmingly, because still in the other election, he got about 70 millions. Now he got about 71. But what was playing much, if you see even the people who voted for him, almost over 70% of the both male and female whites voted for Trump. And why were they voting? Because they think now the immigrants and people who are non-whites are taking up their country. So in one way or another, they were fighting to regain back their country and claim that they are the owners of this country. But then we are yet to see all the rhetoric that he was talking about, how he's going to effect that. And I don't doubt some of the things he can do them, because now that he has the Senate, it will take up to the midterm for again America maybe to push the Senate or the House of Representatives to the other side to create a check and balance. But as things stand now, he has the opportunity to do what he can, although some of them are entrenched, that you don't wake up like how Museveni will wake up and then will say, I need a constitutional reform, and it is done. This time, at least there is some steps that you follow. But although he has the privilege of using executive order, which executive order, I also don't believe that it can overturn most of the things. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we lost Phil. Let's continue. He will catch us with us later. Let me, Brian, maybe if you can add on, why do you think the Trump won overwhelmingly over the Democrats? I mean, the victory was really, was it unexpected?
It was not unexpected. I think we are still experiencing the aftermath and the what someone called the white rush of Obama's presidency. I think when you look at the demographics that voted for President Trump, when you break it down by race, I think the overwhelmingly white rural vote much more significantly went for Trump than it has typically been for other candidates for both parties in the recent past. So I think what you're seeing a certain political realignment in the country, and I think part of the changing demographics in this country, I think, are playing a role in the realignment of the politics in this country.
Thank you, Brian. Philip is back. Hi, Philip. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello. Sorry about that disconnection, but I think now I'm very good to go. You can hear me?
Yes.
All right. All right. Stuck slightly on submission by Francis, but I want us to continue in that lane, and I think I should pick from. I think Brian was saying something. If you can continue in that line, what did President Trump do better that the Democrats did not do that had him get such a win, getting the Senate, getting the House of Representatives, and how he is now as president, getting 312 electoral college votes? That's a huge win for him.
I think what Trump did better than what the Democrats did is what he has called speaking to the, in his words, the forgotten man and woman of America. Because when you break down the voting by race and gender, Trump got 74% of white men, and then he got 69% of white women. Those are very, very significant differences when you consider the population of the Caucasian population in the US is about 60%. So they're getting such large percentages in the largest demographic of the country. I think that makes a significant difference. So obviously there are people who are opposed to the idea of a woman president, the people who are opposed to the idea of a black woman president. So I think you have such persuasions influencing the rest. But I think there's a feeling back to the idea that Trump is speaking for the forgotten man and woman of America. I think there's a feeling that the direction of the country is not going the right way. And I was discussing this with some friends yesterday. But AOC, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, people were noticed that on her X account, on her former Twitter account, she removed she removed her pronouns, she, her, and all that. So I think while the Democratic Party wants to be inclusive, I think when you concentrate on things of whether someone should be addressed as a he or a she, when the fuel when the price of fuel is increasing, when the price of groceries is increasing, I think you come across as out of touch. Not that the other issues don't matter, but that your preoccupation or your focus on those issues, when they are quote unquote real issues affecting the people, you come across as out of touch. And the former advisor of President Obama, David Axelrod, I'll just read what he wrote, and in a way that summarizes how I think the Democratic Party is seen by a significant number of the population. He said the Democratic Party has become a metropolitan, college-educated party, and even though it retains its commitment to working people, it approaches them sometimes in a spirit of a missionary, that we are here to help you become more like us. Implied in that is disdain. I don't think it's intended, but it's felt, and I think Trump has exploited that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that, and it's rather powerful. You talk about President Trump talking to the forgotten men and women of the United States of America. I want to speak to you, Reverend Joseph Kamugisha. Is it such so that President Trump is actually more appealing to the poor people, to the marginalized in the United States of America than the Democrats, than Vice President Harris, and indeed all his team at the back? Is it true that this is one of the major factors that brought this election to have Trump as president-elect now? Yes, Reverend.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Did you say, did he appeal to?
Yes, appealing to what Brian calls the forgotten man and woman of the United States of America.
Yeah, thank you once again. I don't think so. I have a different approach to that. Even though he really stood out and made himself clear to his constituencies, it is also true that he sowed a lot of fear and unnecessary anxieties. And when you look at the rhetoric he was using, for example, when he went to Ohio and told the people, the world that the immigrants there have swamped the area, they have overtaken the country, they have hijacked the Ohio, they are now eating their dogs and eating their cats. That was a lot of unnecessary anxieties planted in people and emotions that created a lot of skepticism. And so the people there began believing what he's, because one thing about him, he has a way of charming people and making them believe him, even though what he's saying is not true. So for some reason, he has a way of, if you want to call it attraction, yes, he has an attraction, but it's based on falsehood. Then you look at other things like, for example, the border. It was a big exaggeration about the border issues. Records show that since Biden took office, the record numbers of people who have been crossing the border have been going down. Number two, they've been deporting people at a large scale. So there's been a lot of effort toward the border issue, even though he didn't build the wall like Trump did. But at least he had an effort of trying to control the migration in that part of the country. And it's true, Kamala herself did a lot toward that. But those are things that Trump overreacted on and planted seeds of doubt among the people. He dwelt so much on that. But also, if you look at it, also on the other hand, there was the color, the issue of color. When you look at the skin color of Kamala, Trump played around that issue as if she was not black or black enough, or not being black enough. He tried to paint her in a different way as somebody who was not authentic. That also created a lot of issues because if you look at the issues concerning some demographics, apart from the blacks, a few black people who voted for him, some of them were depending on some of the things that she didn't do or the things she did. For example, if you look at her role as a prosecutor in California during her days as a DA, some black folks dwelt on that as if it was a punishment to the blacks. But what they forget is that Kamala, as a DA, she was doing her job as a prosecutor. When crimes are brought to your deck or to your dock, what do? Do you say these are black folks, therefore I should give them a lenient hand just because they are of the same color with me? No, you do your job accordingly. And so to them, it was like she was fighting the black folks in California, yet she was doing her job as a prosecutor. I don't think it was mainly about the blacks. There are some folks, I believe, who were also put in jail, the Hispanics, the whites, and other groups of people. So all these are factors which I believe that Trump utilized to his advantage. He was there to exploit the minds of the people, and he did it very, very well, calculatively. Of course, using threats and a lot of lies, his rhetoric. So all these are factors, I believe, which led to that. Of course, Kamala could have been able to see all these things coming and had a way of averting them. But of course, she did not, and she probably underestimated the fact that she was doing well with the Democrats in other parts of the country, which wasn't true. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred, for that. And I want to come to you, Miriam, and let me put it this way. The same man many have termed crazy, criminal, inhuman, unrealistic, racist, has been able to defeat two very clear ladies. 2016, we had Hillary Clinton. We've had now Vice President Kamala Harris. What is happening to the women movement? Why is it such so that you failed to defeat this man?
When it comes to the women movement, it's still very sad that America is still patriarchal. It is still led by this strong man politics, and that foundation is yet to crack. The women are yet to make inroads, and as you can see, it's not only on the presidency but on all sectors. There is one guy who Trump is trying to. I think he has already mentioned that he's appointing him to be in charge of some sector in defense, and is condemning the presence of women soldiers on the front line. So if we are still that, yeah, if we are still having leaders with such a mindset, now imagine the ordinary person. So the American psyche, the American population, we are still, I think, living in this top I don't want to call it too Christian. I think it was like a Victorian patriarchal kind of mindset, which thinks the man is the leader, the woman should be subservient, subordinate to the man in every sector, and this cuts across board. Even the much touted private sector of America is still led by the man. So the women movement are still yet to really talk to the people and tell the ordinary people what it means to be a woman, that women rights. Unfortunately, uh, we still have to inform the people that women rights are human rights, that women have the same capacity mentally, physically, to lead intellectually better than the man. Um, yeah, science has proven they are better managers than men. So we might find that if we had a woman leader, maybe we wouldn't even have these wars that we have around. We wouldn't be having many starving people like we have today. As far as the women emancipation, women empowerment in political leadership, even Africa is at a step higher, much better than America. The general American population,
You see, if you allow me, when you come back to, for example, Uganda today, there is a very huge debate about the affirmative action clauses in our laws that establish the positions of women members of parliament. And people are saying, really, we've given these women opportunity, but it seems it is not about giving them opportunity. It is about training them to be as resilient as the men are. Do you think that is an issue and a bit that they
the
have to
women,
be able to play like the men play the game?
it's not training them to be like the men. The women are better as women. They don't have to be like the men. The men are better as men. The women are better as human. The men are better as human as well. So I think the problem with that structure, like top-down affirmative action policy in Uganda, that is different, and it's very structured. It is the men are trying to push back on their strong-held positions, their traditional position. They feel like an empowered woman is a threat to the man, to that man, quote unquote. And not all of them. There are women, there are men who are enlightened enough, like Brian here, who understand that women deserve much better. Sorry to use your example, Brian, but I know you really support women, so that's why I brought that up. So on the side, back to American policies, I want to bring out something which we have underlooked. If you look at President Trump campaign, the campaign strategy, the Trump that campaigned in 2024 is different from the Trump we have seen previously. This time, Trump wasn't abusive. Trump wasn't even anywhere in the media, like he wasn't so loud, he wasn't so anywhere. Even when you look at the comedians who used to have a field day on his jokes, on his bluffs and arrogant lifestyle, he was not there. So the approach, I think Republicans this time is like they put Trump on the ballot, but they campaigned as a party and they highlighted issues, not the personality of Trump. So previously, we were the campaigns would ride on Trump. Trump is the man to fix this. He's the businessman, so he has capacity to do ABC. But those were this time in the campaign that was pushed aside. So what we saw is we saw a campaign on policies. They are talking about immigration. They are talking about economy, but it's not like Trump, I'm going to do this, that one person, strong man-led campaign, but the party was fully behind it. And I think that strategy worked. And even the people who would have, like swing votes who would just vote Democrats or this time around who I think didn't even turn up to vote, we are like, okay, even if he wins, at least we see maybe the party is going to be behind him. It's not going to be Trump and his arrogance and his all other mistakes. And even when, his approach has changed. He went even to White House to talk to Biden about transition. At the previous time, he couldn't even talk about the handover. So are we going to see a different Trump leadership from presidency from the previous one? I don't think so. I don't think so much will change, but I think we are going to see a party kind of running around him. So we are going to see more like institutional approach than a personalized type of presidency. And I think the most winning thing on Trump, beyond what they've already, my fellow panelists have stated about the gender of the Democratic candidate, being a woman and being Black, which are really bad markers in US politics. I will remember it's only a few decades back that Blacks were considered less human and women are not considered good enough to be anywhere in leadership. So even the effort to put up a woman candidate and that brevity should be recommended from the Democrats because she's there and we have seen her. So next time another woman, another Black candidate comes up, it won't be as shocking. And it won't be the first time. Maybe the voters would finally get to wake up and go beyond that barrier, that glass ceiling, and we finally see some change as far as race and gender is concerned.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that, and I will pick you up on as we continue the conversation. And that is so interesting. You talk about the relationship of the women and how the society in the United States of America is not yet appreciating so much the abilities of the lady in terms of serving at that particular level. I want to come back to you, Francis. Look, the electoral process, specifically the campaigns, and I want to create a comparison. When you come back in the country, here in Uganda and many other African countries, of course, we're having elections across the region, and when you go out there, you see people in the business of coming to rallies and buying drinks for supporters and, moving in the nights, giving out gifts in their homes and telling people how they are there for them. What is it like in the United States to campaign? And indeed, what can we learn or unlearn as a people in Africa, but also the world, that is good practice from the United States of America? Yes, Francis.
Thank you, moderator. To begin with, of course, this is a democracy that is well developed, and it's not like back home where the party is the one to give the electorate handouts. Instead, it is the masses who support a given cause, like as we have said, here people vote ideas, people vote policies. They are the ones who contribute to the cause that they want to see. For example, if somebody has packaged very well what kind of economy the person wants to bring across that will work for them. So they put in money to facilitate this candidate to ensure that this candidate reaches every other person to ensure they hear and then their idea is well supported. It is not like back home. And like here, it's where I heard that maybe Elon Musk went ahead to do a little bit of like what happens back home, but I'm not sure about that in some of the states. But that is the bottom line. So it's not like in Uganda where, and most especially you are aware, the politics of money was brought in by the NRM government. So that is one of their legacy. Like what happened in Kabale and in Chisora, I mean, and other by-elections. But here it is an issue of you are pertinent about an idea. You are pertinent, like Brian told you that people who wanted to see, for example, the price of fuel or the economy working very well, they put in more money to support their candidate to be able to win an election, and they see a change in that direction. And you see, like the Democrats were pertinent about social issues, then they also do that. But also that also comes with the packaging. Like, for example, you heard Reverend was talking about what the Kamala Harris and Biden did on the border issue. But they were not articulating it very well to the population. So the population will not buy into it. So if you fail to articulate your point and also facilitate it to ensure that the message sinks, which I believe Republicans are good at that, although some of their issues are rhetoric, but the way how they pass the message, but it will be sounded over and over until it sinks deep, and also being strategic on what message and where and so on. And I do agree with the Brian, where he said that the Democrats play like more of missionary politics without putting deeper emphasis and ensuring like what does the common man say, and you present it in a candid form than just saying it in a subtle way that you please the majority, but again they don't take you serious that you mean what you are saying. So I think in Uganda maybe we shall get to that. Part of it could be people being poor and no, I would say generally lack of civic education, like for people to know that their vote is their power and their vote can change anything in as far as government is concerned. I think that's what we are still lacking back home, and therefore people are exploited because of that ignorance, not knowing the worth and value of their vote, into their vote being bought than them supporting what they believe in as far as ideology and patriotism is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that. And key to mention is that it is the masses that support the candidates based on the issues they have put on the table to see that they, in the end, achieve them as a country to improve their lives. I want to pick you, Brian. Look, we are talking about the campaigning process, and many things go around in campaigning, especially when you look around the continent of Africa. The levels of violence during elections, people are fighting, people are dying. I know we had a series of assassination attempts, I think around 2 on former President Donald Trump. But when generally you look around what was happening, you don't see the kind of violence like we witnessed back home and indeed on the continent. What is the trick used out there to see that there is not as much violence as we see in the electoral process and campaigning in the country? Yes, Brian.
In fairness to Africa, I think Africa is a relatively young continent when it comes to matters of democracy and self-governance and freedom of speech and all that. just about 60 years old. I think it takes a much, in my opinion, I think when you're comparing it to America, which in 2026, in 2 years, in July, it will be celebrating 250 years of independence. That is 250 years of 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 of, of experience in this experiment that we call democracy. And the example I can give is after I've been in the US here, maybe it's gonna be 22 years in December. When I enter a car right now, I don't even think about it. It's instinct. I just get my seat belt and put it on. I don't even think about it. But if you happen to have like someone in the car who maybe has just come from Uganda, you constantly have to remind them, hey, you need to put on your seat belt. Or the car will first beep and they're like, oh, where's that noise? Oh, you need to put on your seat belt. Or when I come back to Uganda to visit, it's instinctive. I just sit, put on a seat belt, and people in Uganda are laughing at me. But the point here I'm making is it comes naturally. So like if you find that, like, for example, kids who are born in the US or who have been here a long time, like certain things just come naturally. Like the example I'm giving of a seat belt, because you grew up seeing your parents putting on seat belts. Before you got your driver's license, they told you about seat belts, so you understand the importance of seat belts. So it's like a part of you. It's like second nature.
And you see, Brian, that's exactly the point. If you can look at your parent and you know that I have to put on a seatbelt, in this case, Uganda, Kenya, Nigeria have a parent to look at. They have the United States to look at. They have probably the United Kingdom to look at, Germany to look at, and know, oh, when we are conducting an election, this is best practice, this is not wanted. Why don't we look at that parent and act the same?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Well, I don't know if you can. Well, some have. Botswana has. I think they just selected an opposition leader without violence, and the incumbent conceded. I think it has happened in Ghana. It has happened in Kenya. So it's happening much more in Africa than it used to at the beginning. Obviously, the pace at which it is happening is slow. I think we all agree with that. I think we would want it to be a little bit faster. But what I keep telling people is, if you look at the current leaders we have in Africa, those who are not giving up power, they themselves have never experienced anyone in their countries who has ever given up power. So where would they know how to do that from? Biden grew up seeing other presidents do that. He grew up as a student of history. He knows how certain leaders are remembered. So he wants to go out with a good legacy. But of course, that doesn't take away certain inclinations we have as human beings. As we can see, even Trump, who grew up like that, clearly does not respect democratic norms. He didn't do it for Biden, but he had no sense of shame going to the White House to ensure a peaceful transition for him, even though he didn't do it for whatever. So, but I think the point, I know I'm going around the point, but I think the point is, I think some of these things take time. America has the benefit of time, of experience, but also I think we've been betrayed doubly, both by our leaders, but also by ourselves. There was a video clip of the former minister Matembe saying that you Ugandans, I'm tired of defending you people. Like someone comes and visits you and you say, oh, on this sort here, what? He's like, and she was saying our parents were poorer than you guys were. She was like, they were peasants. How come they never humiliated themselves that way? So yes, our leaders have betrayed us by hanging on to power and maybe instigating violence. But I think we've also betrayed ourselves as a people. Where is our sense of dignity as a people? I think there's a story that always goes around that when the US when they were writing their constitution, and I think it was Thomas Jefferson. He had written, because at that time America was part of the British Empire, so he was talking about the duty of being as part of the new nation they were creating. So he was saying they should be subjects of of this nation, and then he crossed it out and put citizens instead of subjects. And the problem I think we have in Africa is that people still see of themselves as subjects of certain kings and certain chiefs, as opposed to citizens of a country. When you are a citizen, you take responsibility for what happens in the country. When you see something going wrong, you speak up, because you have a stake in the future of that country. It's a difference between being a shareholder in a business and you see something going wrong, you see bad customer service, you speak up. It's a difference between being a shareholder and an employee. When you're an employee or a maid in a household, you see something going wrong, you're like, it is not mine after all. I'm just here to work and get paid and I go home. You have no stake in the future. So Ugandans behave like they have no stake in the country, because if you see something going wrong, you you don't speak up, or you are like, or you participate in the going wrong of that something, if you participate in bribing the traffic officer, it may be at a small scale, but like back we're saying how children are learning their parents sitting on seatbelts. You have this kid in the car, impressionable young person, you're busy, traffic is stopping along the road as you're going on your safari, policeman stops you for speeding. The kid knows you are speeding because you yourself, you are saying it in the car, ha, bankute, bankwata. And what you do, you take out a note and give it to the traffic officer. What lesson is that kid learning? That it is okay to bribe. So now, do you expect that kid, when they grow up and have a high office, have a sense that bribing is wrong? No. Of course, yes, there's also the part that government can do, and I think that is well known, that's well documented, that is talked about as well. But I also like to talk about the other part that we don't talk about as well, the responsibility that we all have as citizens to change our culture as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. The responsibility of the citizen, and also I believe the government has a role to make sure that citizen has that particular responsibility. Reverend, I want to pick your thoughts on the campaigning process, how it's done in the United States of America, and what you think is best practice that can be adopted in some of the struggling democracies around the world. Yes, Reverend.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think some of these examples are quite basic and should be easily adapted. But in Uganda, I guess, like Brian was saying, it's a culture that we need to break. We need to abandon the stigma of inferiority complexes, as well as thinking that certain individuals are more better than the others. At the same time, the issue of corruption and bribing people when it comes to vote buying. Those are some of the things that if we were to overcome those, then there will be a good way of approaching the issue of proper procedures of elections. Another thing, of course, is policies. Most of our people, especially politicians, if you look at those people in parliament today, they go there without particular agendas of fixing the problems of the country. Most of them go there to benefit, to enrich themselves. There's a good example of one MP. Unfortunately, he passed on some time back. He said that in other words, He went there because he has seen people enriching themselves in parliament. They go there with nothing. Within 3 or 4 years, they have built mansions. They are driving expensive cars. They are making trips abroad like crazy. So this guy was saying, hey, it's now time for me to go and eat. In American politics, politicians don't join politics to eat, so to say. They go there to fix issues. They go there to work on issues which help the people. Of course, there's an advantage of running of being an electable candidate. But most times, there are those who go there to fix things. So, but then going back to talking about self benefits, I'll point out that our friend Mr. Trump, many people have made it clear that one of his one of the reasons why he came back to run for this for office was mainly to cover up his past and to forgive himself of the crimes that has been already sentenced against him. So we shall see on the first of, or rather on his first day of office, or maybe sometime before the end of the month of January, he will have forgiven himself of so many crimes and done away with some of the loopholes which may have put him in trouble. So some of these things can be fixed by knowing why you are, first of all, standing for office. What is there to give? What is there for people to benefit from you, other than you benefiting from them? Okay. A good example is what the late JFK Kennedy said in a popular statement when he said that ask not what ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country. That is a challenge we have in Uganda. We always have people who are after their own interests, seeking after their own interests, other than what the country needs from them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Joseph, for that. And you highlight that very important a quotation from John F. Kennedy, and I think it's one thing many other people across the world should embed in their day-to-day lives to see that they contribute to the growth of their nations. Miriam, look, a lot happens in the campaignings of, if you're to talk about Uganda, if you're to talk about Kenya here, if you talk about Rwanda or Nigeria or whichever African country you want to talk about, be it South Africa. In your view, is the American way of campaigning a best practice, and indeed should we adopt what they are doing in our countries? Are they going to help us achieve the things we strive for as a country to develop and improve the standards of living of our people?
Yeah, I think there are good lessons we can borrow from how US does the election campaigns. But like Brian said, of course, this is a developed democracy, so we can't expect like Uganda to perform, especially maybe like you see how the transparency on the vote. You vote, your vote is gonna be counted, there is less risk as far as rigging is concerned. Or any bias or whatever, there is that transparency because of experience, because of technology and people's literacy levels and all that. And that type of transparency we can try, but we can't expect it to be as perfect when it comes to Uganda, because we still have a lot of infrastructure bottlenecks. But when it comes to real election, for instance, how people vote about policies, people vote about issues instead of personalities, I think that's something we can borrow. For instance, if you are campaigning in Uganda as an MP, are you campaigning about infrastructure, or you are campaigning about yourself and then what you can do, what you cannot do. So we still have that like strongman politics in Africa compared to institutional led politics. And I think that's one of the hindrances to our democratic growth. And secondly, the benefit kind of what do we expect to get from the politics? Are you there to serve? My fellow panelists have already expounded on that. In US, people just don't go there to really, look for survival. They're there to serve. They are there because they like what they do, not just like it's a do or die. And that also explains about why most African leaders fear to retire. I think most of them are not sure of what is going to happen after that. And like in US politics, where you're gonna retire, you are secure, the state is gonna still provide for you, and there are all those, benchmarks. There are those borders put around to protect the person who has been a president. I think those are things we can borrow, and over time, maybe we can manage to. Maybe accomplish some, maybe put up, and really in our effort to for democratic growth. I also want to point out something. If we are talking about Africa, I think we've reached at that level where of course, we want Africa as a united entity, but I think we've reached at the level where we can point out individual countries in Africa. There are countries which are already doing so well as far as democratic growth is concerned. We recently saw a smooth election and power handover in Botswana. There are countries like Ghana, even South Africa in its chaos and, high noise, they managed to pull off a controversial elections and there is peace after that. I think we should try to, like when you talk about Europe, you are not going to talk about UK and Turkey in the same sentence. When it comes to democratic growth, I think we've reached at that level where we can say Tanzania is doing much better than Uganda, and Sudan still has a lot of work to do. So we need to go deep in Africa and borrow lessons from our fellow African countries who have already mastered some way of doing this democratic process. And I also want to allude to what yesterday Center for Constitutional Governance had a very powerful constitutional conference, and the keynote speaker PLO Lumumba said that when we are talking about democracy, we don't have to look about how the West are doing it, this electoral vote, multi-party, this, that, democracy. There are several ways to do democracy. There are several democratic structures, democratic governance structures that we can adopt as Africa, maybe tailored to our African history and political economy, which could really work for Africa compared to, copy and pasting the Western liberal democracies, which work for them, but they might not work for us, given our histories and our national amalgamations. We are like smaller sub-nations in one nation. Maybe some countries need federation. Maybe at one point we need like regional democracies. We need to really dig deep, and our researchers really need to examine what might work for us, what we might borrow, what we might copy and paste. And I think along the way, we might find out something which can really work for Africa in general, or individual countries in particular.
Thank you so much, Miriam. And you talked about lessons. I want to engage you, Francis, about the lessons. Look, when you look around, I want to speak about election results. When you, for example, in Uganda here in 2021, when the Electoral Commission announced that President Yoweri Museveni had won the vote, Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu, another presidential candidate, said the vote had actually been rigged, and he said he's contesting the election. The same story happened in 2016 with Dr. Kizza Besigye. 2011, Dr. Kizza Besigye still did not concede. 2006, still he did not concede. And if you move out of Uganda, for example, and go to Kenya recently, President William Ruto won the election. Raila Odinga says it was not a fair election. I did not lose this election. when you go back to 2017, still he did not consider many other leaders across the continent. One wins, the other never agrees to the fact that he has lost the election. It is rigged, it is unfair, it is tailor-made for that particular candidate to win. And when I bring you back to the United States, every other time, 2 days, 3 days into the election, you see there is a concession speech and people meet up and they agree on how to move on. And what is the magic between there that African peoples are failing to get, that you can either win or lose? And the country moves. We normally see a lot of violence if it is not a demonstration because my candidate has lost. We've seen in countries like Kenya having a real confrontation and fighting in 2007 because of an election. Why is this trend like this on the continent, and how can we improve it, Francis?
Thank you. I will answer you just in one word. The failure of institutions back home in Africa. It's not only in Uganda. And once they fail, they don't have their autonomy. For example, if we have an electoral commission, it should be neutral and impartial. But what do you see with our electoral commission? So nobody can trust. Then if we come also to institutions, for example, if I talk about the police, if I talk about the army, if the work of the army is to secure our borders, so I agree with them. Like, for example, I will just give an example of Chisoro. It's okay because we are neighboring Congo and anybody can exploit the situation. Let them patrol the border and ensure that the border is secure. Let the police do the work of law and order, and let the electoral commission do its work. That's it. But once the government institutions come in, like the army, like you don't know who is doing what, then nobody is going to qualify that as an election that is free and fair. I'll give you an example. In America here, if a certain state sees that you are a candidate and you have XYZ, maybe you did not file your taxes or what, they have the right not to put you on their ballot paper and you will not surface there. And nobody will complain because institutions work or the structures of government and they are impartial and neutral, which is the opposite when it comes back home. Now, let me give an example. How do you convince me that the violence that is always within the primaries of the NRM government, even people pulling guns to each other, the same party, how do you convince me that they will elect the electoral commission of Byabakama and I trust it that it will carry out an election that is free and fair? Let's give it a benefit of doubt. But does the electoral commission in Uganda stand, for example, and say, this is the roadmap, this candidate should be here, this one should be here, or there should not be voter bribery? If you do it, we disqualify you. What have they done on some of these things that happen? And therefore, all these, not only in Uganda, but also in Africa as a whole and other developing countries worldwide, we still have that problem, the failure of institutions of government. Because if you can talk about all of them, go to the executive in Uganda and also in other either African countries or developing countries, anarchy. Look at what happened in parliament recently. Instead of people using their brain to discuss ideas, they wrestle as if it is a wrestling ground. So you find that our parliament has collapsed. The executive, we don't know what they are doing. When you come now to government institutions, different ministries and so on, completely out of shape. The judiciary, completely. That the judiciary cannot also stand and say, okay, this is a case. For example, when Amama Mbabazi lost last time and he took a case to court and a series of reforms were suggested. Now we have had around an election that passed and we are soon entering into another one. What reforms have been implemented so far? And therefore, do you expect me that I will say that an election will be free and fair? So I think that is the difference, that here institutions work. I'll give you an example. When I go to a hotel, no, a restaurant here, and I meet a congressman or a senator, if I'm the one who is in front of him, I will be served first. And this person is driving his own car. But go back home, even an LC1 chairman, if he comes, you have to kneel down, give them where and so on, honorable, honorable. If you don't call somebody honorable, you'll find trouble. I think that is the difference. We should go back. We see our institutions of government work, not a one man's show like how President Museveni. It is a one man's show. He's the state, and the state is himself. He's the one who will advise on this. He's the one who will do this. And if something does not favor him, then it should not exist. And as if Uganda is going to stop with him. So I think that's what we need to bring back. Can we have functional institutions? I do believe we have people who are technical, who can do everything. I know we have those brains, but if we don't bring that, and then they also become real patriotic, I do also understand where we would be doing some of these things, but a lot of corruption. Reverend talked about it, that people are looking at, let me go and eat than going to serve, which is the opposite. Here people go to serve, not to eat. And in any case, they don't make money in politics, some of them, when it comes to members of parliament or the Congress or the Senate and so on. Instead, they offer service and making the country better for people who will come after them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Francis, for that. Offering a service to make the country better for the people that will come after. Yeah, I think that is a key lesson that can be picked out of that particular submission. Brian, you see, in this election, whether you listen to the debate or to many of the rallies and so on, very little was talked about as regards to Africa. Yet we usually say this is the continent of the future. And for a country like the United States of America that is looking to dominate the world for many more years to come, like it's doing today, it should be looking at a continent that is said to be having a lot of potential and to, in fact, impact the future in terms of economics, in terms of having a lot of natural resources, minerals, and human people who will be the capital for the future in terms of facilitating industrialization and offering labor and offering market at 1.45 billion people. What are the opportunities that lie ahead for Africa in a Trump led by President Donald Trump, in an America led by President Donald Trump? Yes, Brian.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think there's both opportunity and risks. I'll start with the risks. I think you have the risk of seeing certain democracy gains backslide in the continent. I don't think he's someone who's going to be sitting with African leaders and lecturing to them about democracy and that kind of thing. So you have that risk. The second risk is if you remember in his first term, when he was trying to negotiate with Egypt and Israel, and through that whole whatever, he seemed to support the idea of Egypt bombing the Ethiopian dam, because Egypt has always been opposed to the dam that Ethiopia is building, seeing it as an existential threat, their access to their Nile waters. And we just concluded signing a new Nile waters agreement with other countries, which Egypt refused to be part of. I think Egypt and Sudan are not part of it. Other countries are part of it. So you have that risk. You have such risks. Trump is very transactional. So for him, if this country is giving him something and the other country is not, he's going to throw the other country that's not giving him anything under the bus. He's not ideological in terms of having a sense of right and wrong, in terms of having a sense of history of, hey, there's a reason previous American presidents had never moved the capital of Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem because of the effect it has on the eventual negotiations to establish a two-state. So it's very transactional. So you have certain risks that come with that. In terms of opportunities, precisely because it's transactional, I think African countries have some opportunities to deal with him directly in terms of, hey, this is business, we have this business arrangement, there's a business opportunity here. Can America help? Yes or no, without having him lecture us about human rights and democracy and that kind of stuff. So that's an opportunity that they have, but obviously they have to cultivate it. I don't think Africa is on his radar at all. I don't think he has ever been to Africa. Although the youngest daughter, is married to a Lebanese Nigerian man, and she has been to Africa. So maybe there's some opportunities that Africa can exploit. I know the US is building that rally in Angola. I think that will proceed throughout the Trump presidency. And yes, Africa is rising, but we're not there yet. I think we keep talking of opportunity. You know, it's like when we are kids and the people keep saying, you are the future, you are the future, you are the leaders of the future. We are now adults. The people who are telling us we're the leaders of the future are still in leadership positions. We are still waiting for the future to come. But so Africa is in the same situation. They keep talking about it as the continent of the future. But Africa has to do things itself in order to position itself for that future. We have a very young population that does not have a lot of economic opportunities. So we have to make sure we are educating that young population. We have to find jobs for them. There are not enough jobs in government positions, which, back to your earlier point, it adds of where there's so much chaos and violence in African elections is because there are very few opportunities. Most opportunities are in government jobs, so people fight because politics is really about survival. So yeah, I can speak forever, so let me keep quiet.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Africa and benefiting from a presidency of Donald Trump that is said to be an inward-looking president. How is Africa going to deal with this president to see that one, they keep in good terms, but also not be used, but be a participant in the affairs of the world in terms of trade, in terms of tourism, in terms of technology, and so on? Yes,
I think most African leaders stand to benefit from Trump's administration. Rightly so. Recently in Parliament, Anita Among, the Speaker, that fact when she said that she was glad that Trump had won the elections because one, she's one of those people who are under the ban, or rather travel ban to the US. So she feels or she thinks that Trump is somebody they can dance to his tunes by doing what they want and he wants, and because of that, most likely they are going to collaborate and probably work together on that issue. Number two, most African leaders are so much adamant about the fact that fighting the LGBT issues are going to, most of them are very, very adamant about that. And of course, the fact that Trump has also made it clear in his agenda, in his campaign, that he's going to be fighting those kind of vices. So the two, when you look at those two, it looks like they're going to collaborate very well and be able to align well in that area. Another thing, of course, is the fact that most people, especially the leaders in Africa, tend to look at people who are strong-willed and very decisive on some things that go along their thought of political thoughts. So in this case, I think that the leaders in Africa look at Trump as somebody who is going to be easy to work with because of the fact that he has got some policies which are very clear in terms of making decisions without probably consulting and waiting for the Congress and other houses to give him leverage. So because of that, some people align with him in that area because they feel like he's one of them. And I think that because of that, African leaders are going to have an opportunity of working with him very well because of those factors.
You see, Reverend, when you say that he's this kind of person who will take decisions maybe without making a lot of consultations, you create an impression that you have a leader who is not so interested in accountability and checks, and you say that African leaders are so interested in such a leader. Are you saying African leaders are also in that particular kind of situation? There are people who are not interested in accountability, not interested in being checked all the time, and so on.
I believe so. Most of them have shown those kind of characteristics. And of course, when you look at Uganda, for example, at one time when they were passing the was it the bill of term limits or something of that sort. Museveni had to go in parliament himself. He sat down next to the speaker, make sure that everybody in his party was voting right. So some of those things are very clear because he didn't even trust his own people. He didn't trust them. He knew that they were going to vote, and they probably will vote right the way he wants. But he had to make sure that he goes there and look them in the face, make sure that they raise their hands and support the bill he wanted them to pass. So yes, some people work that way, and I think it's going to be unfortunate that some people are going to bend over and do what works for them, other than what works for the country.
Thank you, Reverend, for that. Miriam, Trump and the opportunities that Africa is yet to see from him, because the Reverend tells us that African leaders will want to work with a kind of leader who is not going to ask them about what are you doing and how are you doing it. Just transact business and continue. Is that an opportunity for Africa? And by extension, what do you see the African continent benefiting from a Republican government in the United States?
I think when we talk about African leaders, we assume the few dictators who would rather have nobody criticizing their high-handedness in governance, like the democratic government was doing. But I think majority of African leaders who are looking towards development and strengthening the international bonds of their countries with the international market, US being one of the largest economies in the world, we rather feel left out in the Trump government. Ever since Trump came to power in 2020, he basically did nothing for Africa in general. And then Biden was also talking much, but not doing a lot. So we're gonna see. We expect a lot to be affected, especially like as far as climate change campaign is concerned, as far as the support of the health sector is concerned, and then the real development, the projects, the Goa project, there were so many international policies and links that we are trying to be extended to Africa. The development fund that the Biden was putting up, with the African summit, which they had suggested for investing in Africa. Maybe he might take a few, but we don't expect Trump to make Africa a priority. He does not care. Let's be honest. People who are racist back home cannot really be racist when it comes to Africa. Africa being a majority Black continent. So if Trump doesn't care about Africans in USA, how is he gonna care about Africans back home? And we have an example of the previous regime, the Trump regime. He called it a shithole. That's the worst comment that can come from a leader. And if a person is regarding you as such, how do you expect him to do anything for you? So the African leaders, some of them, especially like 70, who have been sanctioned by USA and other dictators, might look at it as an opportunity to escape that criticism, that kind of policing. But in general, I think it's a big loss to Africa as far as development is concerned. We previously saw Trump cutting down on international scholarships, on international research projects, and I mean his anti-migrant policies will largely affect Africa, especially as far as remittances are concerned. We know most economies in Africa are dependent on those remittances as a foreign exchange supplement to buffer their small supplies back home. So a lot is gonna change, a lot is gonna shift. The Trump is an internationalist as far as we previously saw him even trying to pull US out of WHO, and that's what exacerbated the COVID pandemic, which led to his loss of the election in 2020. So what do we expect now? I don't think a lot is going to change on the international scene, and it's going to be a loss, especially US being the biggest funder to international agencies, which largely support underdeveloped countries. But when it comes to aid, I think we're going to be honest, as Africa does. International aid, the way we are getting it, is it helping Africa? Is it developing Africa? So maybe this is also an opportunity. This is an opportunity to examine what type of relationship do we want to have with the West. Do we have to have this paternalistic, bossing over us and dictating what is good for us and what is not good for us as a continent, or we need partners where we are equal and we are trading as partners and we are respected in that aspect? So whereas it's a negative, whereas it's gonna be a loss, a big loss as far as the flow of international resources is concerned, I think it's also an opportunity for us to examine what type of relationships do we really want to have with the Western countries.
Thank you, Miriam, for that. And it is important to talk about that. Francis, quickly, look, as we talk about President Trump and his policies being an inward-looking person, concentrating on the United States internal matters and caring a little less about external influence, oftentimes our leaders here in the East African community, but also on the African continent, say one of the reasons the quest for integration has failed is because of external interference, and many of them link it to the United States of America. With a president that is concentrating inward, do we have an opportunity now to focus on this integration, East African community, or maybe the African Union, and we see that we achieve this agenda by the end of, at least we have a step taken by the end of the 4 years of President Trump? Yes, Francis.
Thank you, the moderator and fellow panelists. I think it's not that because this president will be inward looking and then that will help us. I think it is much more than that. To begin with, these countries, their foreign policy, regardless of who is in power, it has always remained the same, and the agenda, in as far as NATO is concerned, will remain the same. So that is the point number one. Point number two is the nature of our African leaders. I'll give an example. Like, even when the East African community, we had agreed that some of the issues to do with our economy and so on, we can go and negotiate as a bloc. By the way, that gives us a very good competitive edge compared to when we go as small, isolated countries. But what did Ruto's government do? When we wanted to go and negotiate as a bloc with the European Union, he ended up going and negotiates as Kenya. So these kind of small fissures, the West will always exploit it to become a big rupture, and then we begin drifting apart from what would have been the main goal. But all this is a function, again, of what I have told you, that the long-term and the main agenda of the West, that we need to work hard. Like, I do agree that when we see a person like Trump coming in, whom we think is inward looking, then it would be better for the African leaders to begin strategizing themselves and say, okay, what do we need to do to also begin speaking as one voice? But for the moment, I don't see that we are going to, or our leaders are going to look at that and they reason strategically. Because for the East African community, we have an edge or an advantage. Number one, by now we should have had a common currency, but which we don't have. We should do, although we say in terms of economic trade, like, it is open, but still there are some hiccups here and there. Like some of the things to do with let's say the Bureau of Standards, because like Kenya normally complains that Uganda will take substandard goods or maize and stuff like that. You have heard of that, milk, eggs, and so on. But by now we could have had one Bureau of Standards, for example. So, because we don't have a reason. If we import things through Kenya or Mombasa port, there is no reason why the goods should be examined in Mombasa, then they come, they are also examined in Uganda, and so on. So you would find all these would be now bringing us together. And then from there, if we say, for example, we have products X, like how Uganda is saying, no longer exporting maybe raw materials, we have to process it here. But what is Kenya also? Does it buy into that? What does Tanzania do? What does Rwanda do? But once we go as isolated pieces, even if we keep growing the East African community to have 50 countries, still would be smartly addressed, going nowhere. So I see ourselves that not until our leaders genuinely see some of these and they stop also going in for their selfish ambitions, like for a president to know, okay, I'm the one who will be called in the White House, or I'm the one who will be called in the summit for European Union or stuff like that. And then they begin thinking of, because they our president normally, Museveni normally criticizes the traditional leaders that they were busy selling the Africans and clad in skins of leopards. But guess what? Slave trade is taking place in Uganda by so many people who are being sold in the Middle East. Others die there, even nobody even will question. But you get one American, even when they do something wrong, like those who shoplifted in China, the country comes in, it forgets about the store, but it says that is an American, we have to defend them. So not until we come on realizing those, and then we have a common market, we have a common currency, we even politics, not leave alone the East African Parliament. They have nothing that they can do. For example, can they talk about what happened in our parliament, people fighting, or the policies that are being passed? Are they in unison with what would allow East Africa as a community to thrive, or each country is isolated and in a cocoon, and then we have this that okay, we are an East African community. But otherwise, having a block like that is what can pace these developed countries would have a bigger voice. But I don't see that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And maybe to talk about just last week, government was able to return about 20 Ugandans who had been struggling actually in prison in one of the Middle East countries, and they say they are working around the clock to rescue more 850 Ugandans who are still in those prisons. And they say before the year ends, they should be able to get them back into the country, and hopefully they succeed in making sure that those Ugandans who are suffering out there are able to get their freedom. And thank you so much for those views, and thank you so much, our viewers, for keeping it Civic Space TV and the Uganda Diaspora Show. Today we are discussing US elections and what we expect, the lessons, but also what it means for Africa and the world at large. Brian, I want to come to you and on a subject that President Trump was so clear and candid about, the subject of immigrants, and he says he is going to deport them. And a few days ago, I watched an interview by the Vice President-elect, J.D. Vance, saying they have given them 6 months to pack their bags and leave the country. What does this mean? And in any case, what is the future of immigration in the United States of America?
I think that's what Reverend Kapcha hinted on earlier, that Trump was throwing out some fear mongering and that kind of stuff. I think that message is meant for his voter base. I think it was meant to energize them and excite them and make them turn out to vote. In terms of what it means, I guess we shall have to wait out and see what that entails in terms of policies. But yes, immigration is a hot topic issue in the US right now. But we'll wait and see. I mean, we saw his first term. Some of the stuff he tried to do on immigration, like abolishing the diversity visa lottery system, that was rejected by Congress. So many of the stuff that have to do with immigration, he can't do anything without working with Congress. So we'll have to wait and see.
But you see, you have to understand that we're in a situation where he won both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and this is something they could be interested in as a party, and in case he presents.
Yes, as a party, but yes, but the US is a country of immigrants, so it's not like every Republican will sign on to that agenda. Not just like he didn't get his preferred nominee for majority leader in the Senate already. I don't think he's gonna get some of his preferred nominees like Matt gets from Florida. So it doesn't mean just because he has the majority party, it doesn't mean that everyone in the party leadership structure or in the Senate or in the House goes along with him, whatever he wants. Yeah, he doesn't have that much influence. Yeah, they have their own independent political careers, which they don't have them because of Trump.
Oh, really? Thank you so much, Brian. Reverend, you see, I looked at a scary figure that said during the 8 years of President Barack Obama, he was able to deport more than 3 million immigrants from the United States of America. Isn't that worrisome to the people out there who are in the United States? And President Trump is now coming with a much more pronounced and powerful voice about the same issue and saying he's going to put all of them out of the country.
It's muted.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. I'm sorry for the delayed response. Yeah, it is a worrisome situation whereby the threats have been made and they are rightly fresh in many people's minds, especially those who are illegals, so to say. But at the same time, there is a set of bureaucracies that may not necessarily work in his favor. Some people who know about the procedures of deportation, we're talking about Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, there are some people who are talking about the process which goes along with the deportation procedures. For example, rounding the people, the illegals first and foremost, is going to be one troublesome task. Number two, where to house all those people, because you don't just round people and then put them on the plane the following day or the same day. You round them up, house them somewhere, take them through some court process, and then finally the deportation itself. So Trump has made it sound so much that rather he has made it so made it look so easy. He feels like it is a very easy process, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be as easy as he thinks it is. But at the same time, there's also another financial constraint to that. Even if assuming he was to succeed in this situation, much as he's trying to build the economy of the country, and he says he's going to fight for the working class, he's going to raise the wages, he's going to cut taxes for whatever, he's going to make all these issues which will probably work for the building toward the building of the economy. But at the end of the day, if he was to succeed in deporting all these people, it has been said, and it's rightly true, just like it was in Uganda in 1972 when Amin expelled the Asians. Amin thought that expelling Asians was going to help build the economy because the Ugandans were going to contain their own economy and run their own country. What we saw, for those of us who were young enough to know and to see what happened, the economy collapsed. Schools. I went to a school where 80% of the students were expelled. Those were all Indians. The school we were out of school for almost 6 months. No school because the schools were empty. The teachers and everybody was gone, and of course the economy collapsed because there was no supplies coming in and out of the system. Eventually, we had to go back to bending and sucking to everything that was coming that was happening. The economy literally collapsed within his 8 years of rule. If Trump succeeds in expelling these people, the economy, especially those who are on the farmlands, those who are doing casual labors, those who are in construction, those who are in every area, the economy is going to suffer greatly. So there are people, like Brian rightly said, there are people out there in both houses who know the effects of what this will do to the country. And because of their personal and political interests, they may not necessarily buy into his sweeping agenda of expelling or deporting people, immigrants. So I think it is a double-edged sword. He wants to do something which he thinks is right, but at the same time, it's going to bite him and bite his political party. And within 2 years of his, within the first 2 years of his governance, the primaries will determine whether what he said will do will work for him and his party or not. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a test of time. And I don't think it's going to work in his favor. And I don't think it will work for the country either. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And Miriam, final on this question of immigration and immigrants and the deportation and so on. What can the people that find themselves in a position of illegality in this particular place do to make sure they're on the safe side? The Trump intentions and how moving forward, what can they do?
I think, other panelists have said, Trump can only do so much, but there are still safeguards as far as the law is concerned. The law is very much respected here. And even if you have the Senate majority, you have ABCD, it's the lower courts to decide. It's the different states, different judges in different courts are the ones to finally decide individual case, and it's one by one. But not to repeat what others have said, American economy largely depends on immigrant labor. If you look at the health sector, the industries, the e-commerce, every other sector is 90% driven by migrant labor. There is seasonal immigration, which works in agriculture and other sectors, but even the permanent immigrants are everywhere. I'm going to give a real recent example to show how Trump policy might not work. You know, when he was campaigning, he talked about Haitian immigrants in Ohio, in Springfield. So, but even before the campaign was over, the governor, who is Republican, and Ohio, to put in perspective, Ohio is a red state. It is purely Republican to a large extent, like 80% Republican. But the governors and the local senators, who are all Republican, came out to challenge Trump on that, and they told him that he shouldn't create a trade over immigrant population. The governor of Ohio, who is like the small president of the state, and he has the largest autonomous power over the state policies, came out and said that Ohio State is not going to adopt that anti-migration policy. The whole state, which is largely industrial powered, is run on immigrant labor. And he said they would do anything legally to protect that labor. So, whereas on rhetoric, like Brian said, that's just to pump his supporters. I think that the areas where he can be effective is like he wants to cancel the work visas, the HB1 visas, where you come in as a student. Maybe you are taken up by some companies to work as a temporary worker on that visa. You know, those visas, he might come in and stop a few. He might cancel some international student scholarships. To reduce the numbers of people coming in from outside. He might also close the borders, like he really likes talking about. The border is already closed, but he might allow in fewer people than the Biden government allowed in. On record, all governments, Democrats or Republicans, really are tough on immigration, especially the illegal migration. We don't expect that to change. But there is a way the political rhetoric creates bias in public, and also, I mean, the judges are also human. So if you are a Republican leaning judge and you say the president is saying and anti-migrant, you can use your discretion to do a lot of stuff. So there is that gap, and the overhype creates the tension on ground, that the racial hatred. Most immigrants who come in are either Latinas, Hispanics, or blacks. And that creates that racial tension on ground, where you're walking. One of my friends who is from Kenya was saying they were somewhere in a line at the bank, and the guy said, "Don't eat my dog." There is that which is gone, and it's not even in Ohio. It was in New York. She was in New York. So, and New York is a blue state, is dominated by Democrats. So when you talk as a leader, there is always that impact. You are leading a certain narrative, and that narrative is going to be adopted by people who believe in you. And that is going to create a lot of undercurrents, and it won't favor the immigrant community at all.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is very much fast spent. We have, I think, about 5 minutes to be out of here, and I think we should use them to give what we think. What should the world expect? Trump is going to be sworn in January, and he says in the first one day he will have ended the war in Ukraine. He will have done things to support Israel. He would have changed a lot of things in the country. what should we be looking out for as we go forward into the Trump swearing in and continuing with his 4 years in the White House? I'll start with you, Francis. Francis, quite briefly as we get out of here, what should we look forward to?
Thank you, moderator. Generally, what we should expect is, as we have said, Trump is more of satisfying his clique. Like, you can look at the nature of what he's appointing, his appointees. But in terms of international politics, his focus will be mostly in the Middle East and Israel and of course Russia, but not much on Africa. So that one should be guaranteed. In terms of economic development, for sure, the West, I don't think that they have Africa on the agenda in as far as economic emancipation is concerned. So to me, there is nothing much that we should expect in terms of development, but of course there will be rhetoric and so on. But African leaders should be able to strategize themselves and learn from these occurrences that are occurring. Those who think once President X in the US is in power, then we will have X, Y, and Z. That is not going to happen, but rather for us as our countries should also be strengthening their foreign policies and ensuring that they pursue what works or what can better the lives of their citizens. And what is it that we are trying also to sell out as either Uganda or as African countries, but not what we expect from these outside countries. As how Brian had said, if we also want to play a politics of, if we don't end this idea of looking ourselves as people who are always vulnerable, and the West is our missionaries, we are waiting for them to donate to us, then we are smartly just going nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis, for that recommendation. Brian, looking forward to what you expect or not expect?
In terms of expecting from like a Trump presidency?
Yes.
Well, I think you're going to have a little bit more of the same that we got in the first term. Although I think this time it's going to be more turbocharged. I think, like you're saying, he has a more expanded mandate with controlling the House, controlling the Senate and the White House and the Supreme Court. So I think you're going to see most of the same policies that he had in the first time. Only that now he's someone with a little bit more of government experience, so he's going to be a little bit unbridled in terms of nurturing his policies.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that. Reverend Joseph Kamgisha. Reverend, if you can hear me.
Yeah, can you please repeat?
As we conclude, just briefly in like a minute, what should we expect in the next 4 years?
Oh yeah, I believe it's going to be a lot of tension in every area of life, because when you look at of course the undocumented, they are all over panicking. Everything is not settled with them. They don't know what to expect and what will come. So that is one part of the tension. When you look at the Democratic Party as a party, it is a lot of confusion. Many of them don't know exactly what went wrong, and by the time they figure this out, within the next 2 years, probably they will have no choice but to readjust, which is going to take a long time, because winning over 300 popular votes was not something easy for them to fathom. But also at the same time, we have got countries out there in the international community is also on standby, waiting to see what is this man going to be like. Is he going to be how he was 4 years ago? Has he modified his attitudes toward the international community? Is he going to make a different approach? Or is he going to be the same old man who was adamant and very, very problematic, especially to NATO and the World Health Organization? So the whole world, the country, and individuals are all at a high tension, waiting to see what will come out of this man.
Thank you so much, Reverend, for that. And finally, Miriam, what should we look at?
I think, we're gonna see a more like defensive approach as far as the human rights. I'm more interested in human rights activism worldwide. They will try to push back because, like Brian said, of course, we expect Trump to really have a leeway with most of his outrageous policies. He has the majority parliament, Senate in America, they call it Senate, the House of Congress. And he also, I think this is his last term. I haven't cross-checked, but I think this is his. So he won't be looking at his legacy as far as trying to come back in politics is concerned. And then when you look at his appointees, the people he has appointed already, if they are at all to be an indicator, they already show what to expect from his government, his regime. But then I don't think the other side is going to fold hands and just look at him messing. We already know how much damage he can do. So they're going to be really recharged and trying to fight back. So I expect that much, a lot of activism worldwide. Because most human rights advocates, women emancipation advocates really fight as one group. And even in USA is a really like a 50-50, like they are really these traditionalist conservative who vote Republican, but then there are these activist human rights advocates who who advocate for abolishing enslavement across the world, who advocate for climate change, who advocate for human rights, LGBTI. They are also on the other hand, and it's 50-50. So they were more relaxed. That's why the Republican side overtook them. But I also want to think Trump really won based on the economy. The economy is really, the inflation has been hurting the ordinary voter. So that one was something which worked in his advantage. But then I want to, I would, we are, I'm going, sorry, we're gonna expect a lot of fighting back from the Democrats, from human rights activists, from climate change activists, from across the world, not only in US, because USA being a global leader as a country really affect a lot of policies done on ground affect every other policy internationally. And then there is going to be another front. For instance, Ukraine is saying USA shouldn't betray them. They are already on the battlefield with Russia. And I don't think Trump is going to have a leeway over that, whether he supports Putin. I don't think he's going to abandon, or the Republican Senate is going to allow him to abandon Ukraine. No, I don't think he's going to have that. And in the Middle East, I don't think he's going to do so much to stop that carnage being done by Israel. Again, based on those traditional ties that USA has with those international agencies and countries. So he's gonna do a lot of talking. As far as policy change is concerned, we will see. I don't think much is gonna change, but a lot of
Thank you.
gonna change as far as the public psyche is concerned.
Thank you so much, Miriam Chingasho, for those views and for joining us on the show today. Reverend Joseph Kamgisha, thank you so much for your views and for joining the conversation today. Mr. Francis Kamahanda, thank you so much for your views and for joining the conversation today. And Brian Wesiga, thank you so much for your views and for joining the conversation today. And indeed to you, our viewers, thank you so much for joining the Uganda Diaspora from Civic Space TV. Special thanks to Africa and the Center for Constitutional Governance for making sure this happens and is possible. And I want to welcome back all the people that attended the Constitutional Conference yesterday in Uganda at the Sheraton Hotel, and a lot was discussed. We had a lot of conversations with people like Professor Pierre Olumumba, with the Justice and Constitutional Affairs Minister, the Honorable Norbert Mao, with the Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Thomas Tayewa, with many veteran politicians in the country, legislators, members of the civil society, and many other Ugandans that attended that conference. I welcome you back, and I hope it was beneficial to you individually, but also to contribute to the continued aspirations of this country, Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us today, and may you have a very, very good time. See you.
All right. Before you go, to add on to that, Phil, those who missed out on the constitutional conference, like us in diaspora, there is still a link to the proceedings of the conference or the whole of it on Civic Space on YouTube. So just go there and watch important discussions indeed. And some of them should be very, if adopted, would really create a big impact in forging a way forward for Ugandan democratic path.
Very true, very true. So you look it out on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of Civic Space TV, and everything is out there for you to follow in, and you can leave a comment, you can like and share so that everyone is able to interact with this kind of message that is going around the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a nice weekend, panelists.
Great weekend to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.